Hey there, I'm so pumped to tell you about an amazing new community I've launched called Grief to Growth Circle Community. It's a space for people who are grieving to come together to support each other, and for people who want to know who we are, why we're here, and where we're going to have those conversations, all the things we talk about on the podcast. So I invite you to join me at grieftogrowth.com/community to become part of this compassionate crew. The best part, it's 100% free. And you have access to me in addition to everybody else in the community. In fact, the podcast will be there so you can talk about the things we talk about in the podcast right there in the community. There's also some premium content if you want to go deeper in the work I'm doing, but mostly it's about building relationships and community and about sharing resources and supporting each other. So come on over and check it out. It's grieftogrowth.com/community. I'll see you inside. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, welcome to another episode of Grief to Growth. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I'm delighted to have you with us. My name is Brian Smith. I'm your host, and this podcast is dedicated to helping you navigate the difficult moments of life, understand our place in the world, and explore the deeper questions of our existence. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce to you Bernadette Thompson. She's the owner of Tell Me Our Story Genealogy and Ancestral Healing. Bernadette is not only a trained genealogist, but also a certified grief and spiritual coach. Her unique approach combines ancestral healing with grief and trauma and understanding, guiding individuals on a profound journey of self-discovery and emotional healing. In today's episode, we're going to go into the fascinating world of ancestral healing. Bernadette will share with us how uncovering our ancestral stories can help open us up to a deeper understanding of who we are. We'll explore the mind, body, and spiritual connections to grief and how beginning a personal journey into our past can actually help us move forward in life. So get ready to discover how compassion, forgiveness, resilience, and wisdom from our ancestors can aid us in overcoming challenges like grief, loss, change, and uncertainty. This is more than a conversation about genealogy, though. It's about healing and connection with our roots to find peace and purpose. So stay tuned afterwards and join us at grieftogrowth.com/community to continue the conversation. And with that, I would like to welcome Bernadette Thompson.
Thank you, Brian. I am very happy to be here I feel like I'm one of your listeners. And so I am happy to be sharing my story with them.
Well, I'm really glad to have you here today and talk about this, really important topic. We talk all the time here about grief and loss and connections and stuff. We don't talk so much about ancestry and how that impacts us. So what I'd like to talk to you about is how did you get started on this journey of understanding ancestry?
Well, it's very interesting because I didn't set out to become an expert in ancestral healing. And it was really my journey through my own grief and loss that got me headed in that direction. I had always been interested in just family history, and so the genealogy part had started a very long time ago. Looking back and helping a lot of other people discover their family trees. But it was the story. My husband passed away in 2017. And he came to me in 2013 and said, I have a problem. And his problem was alcoholism. And we knew that he had a problem with alcohol, but I didn't know that this was becoming deeper and deeper. And he truly, the journey from 2013 to 2017 was a struggle for all of us. So I want to say the grieving almost began immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But where the ancestry comes in is that was always a comfort for me. So as I was going through this really difficult time, continuing to research my ancestors and doing that with others was grounding for me. As you know, things were in upheaval, and also during that time, we were all, myself and my children and my husband. It's a horrible disease, and he I'll say he has a beautiful soul,
Mhm.
um, but he couldn't survive it. And during that time, I was just asking, as we often do when we're in those trauma times in our lives, asking for help, asking for guidance, just asking for spiritual guide, kind of opening up that way. And my ancestors started to come in and surround me. And so that's part of the what what began as they came. It started with a visitation. I don't know if you're familiar with a visitation, but it's a dream that is much more than a dream.
Mhm.
And I had a great aunt whose name was Sister Lou. And she came to me this one night. I had been praying, and she came to me and said to me, it was the two of us in this dream. She's holding my hands, and I'm staring, trying not to stare at her, and she's trying to get me to look at it. It was just the two of us, and the room was kind of golden. And she finally gets me to look at her, and she says to me, "We hear your prayers."
Mhm.
And after that, I woke up and I realized that all of this ancestral work that I had been doing was a part of this journey, of this grief journey that I was on, and that they were with me. And it made me realize also during this time to kind of go back and continue to want to learn more about my ancestors, because now I knew, as they were hearing me asking for prayers and asking for help, that they were there. And so one of the stories that is really was an important story about how I realized that ancestral healing was a part of our looking back at our ancestors, was my father's story. And my father his parents passed away when he was 5 and 6 years old from tuberculosis. So this is way back in the late 20s. And so he and his brother were left, they were orphaned.
Mhm.
But my grandmother had come from five girls, and two of them stepped in with their husbands and raised the boys. And during that time, they put everything that had to do with their parents, they put it away. So there was no signs um, of their parents, no, pictures, nothing.
Mhm.
And when and that was just, but I didn't know that there was anything other than my father dearly missed his mother. He remembered her the most. And when my great aunts passed away, um, suddenly my uncle brought down all of these pictures and all of these things that had belonged to his parents, and they had been hidden away. And my father was re-grieving because he suddenly was seeing pictures of his parents and pictures that he had never seen before. I had never seen a picture of my grandmother, and my father was in his 50s, and I was about 17 at the time. So it was, as I'm going through grief, all of these things start to flood back into me,
Mhm.
and it encouraged me to look back more and helped me begin to understand that these stories were back there to help me go through my grieving process now at the time.
Wow. Wow. So when you got into studying genealogy early, was it a spiritual thing? Was it just like um, you wanted to know where your origins were, your physical origins, or what was the attraction? What was the pull for you?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, I'm testing out a new feature. I'd love to get your feedback on it. It's called Fan Mail, and you can send me a message right from the show notes of the podcast. So look for the link that says send me a text. You can ask a question for a future podcast. You can suggest a guest or just give me any feedback you want. Just remember, it is one way. I can't text you back, and I will not have your name, your email address, or your phone number unless you include it in the message. Let me know what you think.
The pull for me was there was always a spiritual, but I didn't recognize it
Mm.
until I was much older. That pull was there, that I was always seeking. So it really began as an interest, an interest in history, an interest in. I've always had an interest in ancient civilizations, and always had So I've had this kind of sitting in the background. And when, this is just as Ancestry.com was beginning to come out, and things were being able to, you could look at things online. Because before that, you had to go to a library, and everything was footwork. So that's really what, just a deep interest in family history, but also an interest in even the religions of the world. It was a fascination across all things ancient. Is really
Okay.
what kind of drew me.
Wow. So I understand you're trained as a genealogist. Is that true?
Yes.
And what does that involve?
So it is involved in training for genealogy. Genealogy is actually a library science. If you go back, I kind of connect it with, if you going back the Dewey Decimal System, where we'd go to the library and you'd look things up and you'd find the book and you go, and that's the way genealogy was born. People were looking for records. Records were kept. And so people would go, you would go back and just look at the records and find your ancestor and put that ancestor on your tree.
Mm-hmm.
So as I got into genealogy, genealogy was already in the process of a tremendous growth, because everything had gone online. And so my training was not only doing it myself, but working with other, taking courses that were offered and other genealogists working together to understand not only to put those names on a tree, but the depth of the stories that were there. And when we discover those stories, it starts to fill in our background. It starts to help us understand where we came from, and it helps us in those times of uncertainty, because it's solid ground that you're standing on, because you're looking at history and you have the papers to tell you, this is my ancestor. I'm connected to this person, and this was their story. So there's so much around it, but that's kind of how the genealogy comes into this whole part of ancestral healing, is being able to discover the stories that are there and the amazing connection that we have to those stories.
Yeah. And when you use the term ancestral healing, I guess I could see that going both ways. So this is our ancestors healing us, or us healing the trauma of our ancestors, or is it both? Time for a real quick break. Make sure you like and subscribe. Liking the video will show it to more people on YouTube, and subscribing will make sure you get access to all my great content in the future. And now back to the video.
That's a great question, because I think of ancestral healing in more than one way. We are healing. Science is telling us that our ancestors, the traumas that they went through, are passed down to us, or can be passed down to us. And the way to explain it is it's epigenetics. And what happens to our genes is that they get turned on and off in a specific way. It doesn't change the basis of who we are. It doesn't change, how we look, or any of those, our general DNA makeup. But it's connected often to our responses and how things are expressed. So if our ancestors had experienced trauma, but that trauma response in them would have become a greater, would have come up more often for them. So, particularly if trauma is experienced over and over. And as it's passed down to us, it shows up that we begin to show trauma reactions, even though we may not have experienced that trauma that they had experienced. So, also, what is passed down is patterns of behavior that are associated with trauma. And, as when you go through something, and as our ancestors went through something, they would, it's all about protecting ourselves and trying to prevent that trauma from being reignited inside us. And so it is a way patterns of behavior show up, along with just the ways that we respond, like we see a bear in the woods, to something that is less severe, and our reaction should be a little calmer. And so this is where we, get into the whole mental health things that also get passed down. But the other side of it is the forgiveness that we have, and the understanding when we realize, and it's the flip side of the story that I was just telling you. I was really angry when my great aunt had, when I knew that they had kept all of this from my father, because I could see the grief that he was going through again. And so when that happened, as I was going through this process with David and trying to keep my head above water, I started looking back at them, and I started going deeper and deeper, and realized that these five little girls, had themselves been orphaned when my great aunt was 10 and the youngest was 1. And their father passed away. They were Irish. They were born of Irish immigrants, the famine families that had come. They lived in a tenement in New York City. And their mother survived, but the father was gone, and she couldn't provide for the girls. So within several months, the girls were all put in orphanages. And my grandmother and her youngest sister were the ones that were there the longest, but they were in an orphanage for over 12 years. So their whole childhood, their whole life. Their mom, I'm not quite sure of what her story is, but she falls out of the picture. But this great aunt, Nan, who was one of the ones that cared for my dad, she kept them together. And I found them in a census in 1915, and the girls had all been brought back together. And I realized that the grief and the loss and the trauma that they had been through, they were trying to protect the boys. They only knew loss. And so their idea of putting everything away was as protection, not as a way of harming them, but they thought they were helping them heal.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And, being really frank with you, uh, genealogy never interested me in the past, because I'm like, who cares what this person's name is that lived in 18 whatever? It's because it was just a name on a piece of paper. And my father got really into it. Again, didn't really understand why, but he started tracing our family roots back. And then he finds out we were descended from Thomas Jefferson. But now you start to have some stories come around, and so it's not just names on a piece of paper. Now they become real people to you. And that's when to me, it gets more interesting. And then, tying in kind of, piggyback what you're saying about epigenetics, because again, there could be this kind of like, well, so what? These still people I never knew. But this comes down to us, and science is start figuring it out now. It's not because we don't know how things work. Scientists they're pretty much clueless about a lot of things, but they've actually shown that, we can experience trauma from our ancestors that we never met, and we never had those experiences.
Right. We can, absolutely. And what it opens up, and this is the metaphysical side of it, it opens up our spiritual connection with our ancestors. And, one of the things that during my time, in the grieving process, I began to open up spiritually. And, as I had said that, my great aunt had come to me, I was raised Catholic, Irish Catholic, so not a big surprise out there. But I'm not practicing Catholic, hadn't had any, real anything to do with. But I was watching somebody once, and right during this time, and they talked about using the rosary as a meditation. It was actually John Edward, who is if you're from the East Coast, you might know that he's a medium, and he talked about using it and
Mm.
as a way of meditating, and he did it before he would read an audience. And so I'm like, I could do that. I remember having that. And I was looking for ways to keep myself settled. And so I started saying it. I'd say it at night. And if anybody out there is a Catholic, they know that you're supposed to say it out loud, just audible. It's not like I would say it talking to you.
Mhm.
So this one night I'm saying it, and all of a sudden it comes through me. I'm saying it in an Irish brogue. And I realized, it was, if you could have had a camera on me, my face, I was kind of looking around like, how is this happening?
Mm.
But it came through in a very strong, I couldn't do an Irish brogue now if you asked me to. But I realized in that moment that it was one of my Irish ancestors that was coming through and
Mm.
helping me. And I was able, as the spiritual side was beginning to open up, I was able to look at the tree and discover who it was just by I could feel her spiritual presence. And it was my great great grandmother from Ireland, one of them on my mom's side. And so the, um, the ancestral healing took on a new understanding, because now I've gone through the genealogy where I'm grounding myself in the true stories, and now I'm opening up to this side where the ancestors are coming in and helping me through through my trauma. And it was during this time, as I'm continuing to help people build their stories, that I began taking them through their ancestral healing and helping them open up to more and know that this was more than just um, putting the names on the tree.
Mm.
And you could see it. I understood trauma because I have a professional background in working with both young and old with trauma
Mhm.
and grief. And so I could see their reactions that they were having and patterns of behavior. And as we began to break through it, the healing, the forgiveness that comes through, the forgiveness that I had for my great aunts was amazing.
Mhm.
They were like my heroes. And I realized if they had gotten through what they did, I could get through what I was going through.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it opened up.
That's wow, that's so powerful. And it's really so important. That the idea of understanding what other people have been through gives us the ability to forgive them, or actually to realize that no forgiveness is necessary. I would say it goes even beyond that. But we
Right.
can look at someone's behavior, and if we don't understand where it's coming from, then we tend to judge them. But if we understand
Mm-hmm.
where it's coming from, it allows us to have that connection that you have with someone that you might have held something against. And I wonder about what have your experiences like with something like alcoholism? Could that be a generational or traumatic response?
Yes. I mean, it is definitely generational. David came from a family that had, his father was an alcoholic, his brothers were alcoholics. So it was, and we were always so aware of it that it was like, well, we won't allow this to happen.
Mm.
It's that, and when you look back, you can see, to be honest, the Irish have, there's a lot of alcoholism in Irish families. And it was, it is, I think, not only genetic that it is passed down, but it is also as the experience of what they were going through, where people were self-medicating, as happens even in today. So
Mhm.
I think what is the biggest understanding is that all of that plays part of it, all of it. And when we have a better understanding, when we can see that maybe we have alcoholism in our families, or whatever it is. As I help people through their stories, there are many different difficult stories that people encounter and are hard for them to hear.
Yeah.
And helping them heal through those difficult stories is also, it strengthens people. It really does. And it, for me, grief has been something I've been able to grow through, which when I first was going through it, we all know that grief hits you, and it doesn't, it will never leave you. But there are ways um, to grow through it and to allow ourselves. We don't have to leave it behind, and we don't have to carry it all the time. We can put it down,
Mm.
and that's truly what doing some of this work helps people do, is to put down what they've been carrying and know that there's more out there for us. Those of us who have experienced great loss and trauma and grief, that we can. They are, and our ancestors, all of those who are on the other side, want us to live out our lives with, a lot of in a life that we would love, and so.
Yeah, I love how you've combined this with the metaphysical, a term you used earlier, and a term that I'm increasingly embracing because I think it makes so much more sense. I mean, the physical sciences are great; they're important, and we talked a little bit about epigenetics. I mean, we've known about genetics for a very long time. We've thought of genetics as being kind of hard coded, right? It's like, okay, I've got this trait, nothing can be done about it. I'm going to pass it to my children. It's just, this is the way genetics go. But epigenetics, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of like these things get turned on and they can be, we do have control over it. So it's like a good news, bad news thing. It's like, if I have
Yes.
this trait, if I have this thing that's going on, it doesn't mean I'm doomed to have this forever. I can understand it and I can, in a way, heal it.
You you are absolutely correct, Brian. And then, so as somebody, I was just working with somebody, and they asked that exact question. So if I've had a gene passed down that is has maybe has resulted in some mental health issues for some family members, does that mean that it's going to be continued to be passed down, and that's that we have to deal with this?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no, because as we uncover these things, and as we begin to understand why this change happened in the first place, that connection and that reaction on that, for that particular gene, can be switched off or switched on, whichever, as it gets passed down from us. And science actually used it. It is the looking at the descendants of the Holocaust, was because it was a group of people that they could study in a very short amount of time. And so they
Mm-hmm.
used that group, and that's where a lot of this science came forward. But us understanding gives us a way of, it helps us heal. And
Mm-hmm.
we start to say, okay, I get why this scarcity came down to me, and why I get why this trauma reaction came down. And I could certainly look back through my family and see those things that had been passed down.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's fascinating because it does open up a whole thing for us in terms of I think hope. I tell my wife every family is strange. It's like we look at other people's family, we think they're normal. It's like, no, we all have weirdness in our families. We all have these things. In my family, there's a history of like anxiety, very nervous kind of people and stuff. But when we can understand where that came from, we can start to
right.
break those patterns. We don't
Yes.
have to live that way. And it's really, I think that's a really wonderful thing that comes out of the work that you're doing, that we can understand. We can, again, and I've even heard this concept, and we kind of touched on it earlier, but I like to maybe go into it deeper because I know our ancestors want to be here and help us, but I've also heard that we can heal them. We can heal their trauma. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, we can, because they are working with us, and their trauma it's kind of when they see us healing, it is healing for them. So
Hmm.
it is opening up the whole line. And, when we think of it, I don't think of it this way anymore, but I used to think that I'm reaching back and understanding, so to heal now and then be able to move forward. But it's
Hmm.
really a circle.
Right.
And so I think that um, we can heal, we can help them heal, because metaphysically there, if we talk in that, there truly isn't time. Time is something that
Right.
so in that sense, it is absolutely something, because we can help them understand what it was that was causing, our ancestors had their ancestors passing things down to them. So
Hmm.
this has been something that's been going on for, thousands of years. It just looks different. And it's easiest for us to go back several generations and see it, but knowing with the knowledge that even if we can't understand or see directly what the trauma has been passed down before that, we know it's there.
Hmm.
And because we know we all, even if we came into this world as a perfect family, things happen in our lives that are traumatic. And whether it is a horrible hurricane that hits, or if it is, loss, some grief and things. So all kinds of things affect us even in this lifetime. But being able to share that with our kids can also help them.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.growth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, well, we're getting into some pretty deep topics here, but that's the nature of reality, and that's why I brought that up to you, because I read a series of books by a woman named Frances Key, and they're called The Team. And this book, her mother is passed in the spirit, and she's channeling this stuff to her daughter Frances. And she talks about this idea of like being able to, time doesn't move just forward. And physicists are even telling us this, but they're like, we don't understand why it looks like time only moves forward, because it should flow either way. And we're getting more and more information from the other side that says, there is no time. So it's kind of an illusion. So we can, we can in a sense change the past. I don't understand how that works, but that's what I've been told.
Yeah. And I think it is so wonderful that we are trying to start talking about these things. I agree. It is hard to understand. And because we have, we just have this linear, we've kind of been taught our whole lives that it's just linear.
Hmm.
And if you can't go back and fix that, I mean, that's really what, don't cry over spilt milk,
Right.
those types of things that we've just been told our whole lives. But I think the spiritual opening that I have had, and now I am actually guided. I have a spirit guide that is with me, that helps me through. Um,
Hmm.
but it is through that I feel that I can be of service, so much more service to others, helping them realize that I feel like I'm an accidental spiritual person. Not it wasn't. I had always wanted or understood that there was more to life.
Hmm.
Um, but going through this whole process, I've begun to understand not only how we can connect with our ancestors, but that we also can connect to the other side, and that there are ways that we can build that connection. And it doesn't happen. Our ancestors and our spirit guides want to connect with us in a language that we understand. And you and I have talked how your daughter sends you signs, and signs are definitely one way of hearing from them.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, yeah. There's just I think that starting to delve into this is the best gift for humanity, and I think the more of us that share our experience and understand that there is more to learn, it's just powerful.
Yeah, there is so much to learn, and as I said, for me, starting to understand some of these concepts, I don't feel like I'm ever alone anymore because I feel like there's always a bunch of people with me. As the Bible says, a great cloud of witnesses. So,
Yes.
the work I do, I feel my daughter with me, I feel my grandfather with me,
Right.
and I feel like we're all working this together. I just happen to be the one that's in the body at this moment.
Right.
But it's more like it's all a team effort. So as you talk about, your great aunts and your great great grandmother and all these people, they're not gone. I think that traditional, it's like, well, they're gone and it's our
Yeah.
time. It's like, no, we're just it's our time to be in the seat here right now, but they're still with
Right.
us and we're still all working together. And that's
Yes.
I think it's a very uplifting feeling.
It is incredibly uplifting because I know that when even from that first visitation, when I woke up that morning, I realized that they were with me, and I felt like, okay, I'm not alone.
Hmm.
I don't have to figure this all out by myself. And it was huge. It was huge because I still had time before he passed away, and so many difficult things that happened between 2013 and 2017. And so knowing that they were there, and when I found out he had passed, having just knowing I was surrounded, and that he was there. I mean, I heard from him you know pretty quickly after.
Oh, really? What'd you hear from him?
So he showed up. He showed up as a crow, which is, sometimes they'll show up. A couple of weeks later, I took the dog for a walk, and I was walking in this little wooded area, and this crow kept following me and following
Mm.
me.
Hmm.
And finally, I'm squawking the entire time, and I'm thinking, what is this? And finally, I'm like, you're a crow. You're showing up as a crow. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you be a crow? Like what? And it dawned on me that he had to take a ferry to go to work. We were in Vermont. He took the ferry across Lake Champlain,
Mm.
and he used to go by this woman's house, and he used to call her the crow lady because she had all these plastic crows on her front lawn,
Oh,
and
wow.
she'd dress them up for the season. So if Valentine's Day, they're all in red. Christmas, they all have Santa hats. So I'm driving back from this where I was taking the dog from the walk from this dog park. I'm driving back, and all of a sudden I look over, and there is a house that had the crows. This is I'd never seen them before. Dressed up crows on their front lawn. And
Hmm.
I knew that was him saying to me, yes, that crow was me. He confirmed it by showing me the crows on my way home. So that was kind of the first way he showed up. But
Hmm.
he shows up in song too.
Oh,
Like he
really?
sends me songs
Hmm.
is a way. So there are lots of ways that
Yeah.
they can show up.
And I think it's really wonderful we can recognize that. And I see as you speak about him, even now, your face, lights up, and that's what having this connection can do for people because we don't feel like our loved ones are gone. They're still here with us in a very real way. Not, it's interesting because some people, well, as long as you remember them, they'll live on your heart,
Yeah,
and that's a great thing. But no, they're really still here.
they're really still here. Yeah. Well, and I think what's helpful about doing the ancestry is if somebody doesn't have that background, they don't really know about their ancestors, and they've lost somebody here in this lifetime. And that grief is so, so hard, so, so hard. understanding not only that they are around, but as you begin to understand and learn about your ancestors, there becomes this extended family that you realize is with you, and so that this extended family is caring for your loved one, and they are all together. It opens it up in a way that it takes the focus off the paralyzing grief that when you're just staring at that
Mm-hmm.
one life that you're so desperately missing and one person that you are truly grieving. So I've helped people go through these journeys, and it's surprising how transformational that they can be.
Have you felt that have you felt that it's given you a sense of purpose, also a sense of like or mission or something like that, from having this perspective?
It has definitely changed my perspective. As I said earlier, I worked with middle school students that had trauma and helped them. I did behavior plans for them. I also have worked in elder care, and actually, I am trained from the University of Vermont as an end of life doula. So I've done all of that work around grief and trauma, but
Mhm.
it was this ancestral healing wave that came to me and the spiritual opening that I realized that there's this group of people that I feel called to share this with. That there is so many of us that are trying to move forward, that are maybe stuck and really having difficult time, and it definitely feels like a calling for me now, and so this is where my focus is. And tell me our story, it comes from the point of view of the child asking the parent, tell me our story, what is our story? And it's just so helpful to share that and pass it down.
Okay, so that's I was going to ask you. So tell me our story is the point of view of the child saying to the parent, tell me
Yeah.
about where we came from, who we are, those types of things.
Right. And so when we can't ask because our parents are gone or our grandparents are gone, and that's where the genealogy can come in. And many
Hmm.
people talk about ancestral healing strictly in an energy work, and
Hmm.
I don't want to dismiss that, because there is a lot of energy work where there are people who have spiritual connections, and they can feel the energy of the ancestors and kind of do some healing that way.
Hmm.
And mine does happen, but it starts with more of the solid ground, and then as the ancestors come in, they are definitely around to help the healing as well. But
Hmm.
I had forgotten to mention that earlier, that a lot of people have heard of ancestral healing, but they've heard of it in the same way as Reiki. Like if you're doing that,
Right.
it's a spiritual, very powerful. It
Hmm.
can be very powerful, but this is a different way of understanding, and understanding how ancestral healing can help.
Yeah. So if someone were to come to you, how do you begin working with someone? So is it doing the actual genealogy, getting on ancestry.com, or how does it work?
Yeah, it actually is, unless
Okay.
they already, but I do it. If somebody came to me and they already had their ancestry done, I would look in and help them find the stories. Because many times, as I said, Dewey Decimal System, it is names on a tree, and they don't really have the stories that are attached. And
Hmm.
the records and documents hold so many, there's so much out there. That's the way we begin the work, but we also begin the healing side of it, understanding that there is ways to begin looking at themselves and looking at family with this compassion and wisdom and understanding as we're beginning to learn about the ancestors. So it kind of goes together. And then also helping, I do have a certification in life coach, and can help people take those next steps to begin to vision a life that they would love, and one that can help them just begin to move forward, even if it's small steps. I
Hmm.
know that sometimes that's all it can be, but baby steps can help us walk up a mountain if we just know. So, what I usually do is somebody would come to me if they were interested, and we would have a session together, just a discovery session, a free session to talk about where they are and what might be helpful
Hmm.
to help them along their journey. And so that's usually how I begin. But I try and be that it's comprehensive because it's so important to know the past. And if somebody doesn't know the past, I have the skills, the genealogy skills to go back and to help them build that tree and discover that family that they may not know is there.
So, how would someone, what typically drives someone to come see you? Is it just like curiosity? I just want to know about my background, or is it someone that says, I've got this issue that I can't get over and I'm trying to figure out where it came from, or is it both?
It is both, but it is becoming more as people hear more about the ancestral healing side, that they have often a curiosity. But curiosity is usually backed up by some type of um, trauma or grief or something in their background that's kind of pushing them in that direction. Like, I have this desire to know more and I don't really know why.
Mm.
And we because we often it's back there, and whether we really recognize that it's back there or not, it's still there. So it is. So that's why I do try and speak as much as I can, because it's when somebody hears me, they can understand more of what going through this would do for them.
Mhm. Well, the thing is, we all have ancestors. you know, we all came from somewhere. And again, I'm thinking about myself when I was younger. And my father was doing stuff. I'm like, who cares? I mean, why do you? I mean, I know my grandparents. Okay, fine, but beyond that, why do I even care? This is many many years ago. But now I'm understanding that we're all a lot more connected than we think we are. None of
Right.
us we're not we didn't just pop in here, this idea that we just appeared suddenly on the planet. We came from somewhere and we came from ancestors and we've got all these things, and these we're all interconnected maybe in more ways than we'd like to admit. But understanding our own behavior, I think can even help us, we talked about forgiveness earlier, to forgive ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I will say too, it's funny. Our ancestors, the ones that are there, wanting to really heal you, they guide me. I get directed when I'm doing
Mm.
somebody's ancestry towards uh, towards a certain line, a certain lineage of
Mm.
the because in we all one of the reasons why people feel like, why do I care, because it's and so on and so on. There are so many of them.
Mhm.
Why would I want to? But as you look back, I know that the connection with Thomas Jefferson, there's an importance. I can feel spiritually feel that importance of that line in in your lineage, and I know there are other important lines, but
Mhm.
it is interesting that these ancestors will direct us. And the other thing that popped up when you were just saying that is, some people believe this isn't our first rodeo and won't be our last, and that we have past lives. And many of our ancestors are connected to those lives, but some of the ancestors that we may be connected to may be from a different life, a past life too. That is, so there's a lot in there.
Yeah, there is, and I think increasingly the idea of reincarnation in the West is becoming more and more common. A few years ago, decades ago, people look at you like, what are you talking about? And now it's almost like, at least the circles I'm in, it's pretty much accepted.
Yeah.
Mediums tell us this. People who've had near death experiences tell us this. So how it actually works, again, we don't know. But I don't think this is our first rodeo. And
Hmm.
so again, understanding all these connections and understand that we're multi-dimensional beings, and the more we understand this, the more I think we can find our place in the world. And
Hmm.
it's really interesting to me. There is this such an epidemic of loneliness in the United States now, and but also in the world in general. People feel kind of lost. In a lot of cases, I feel like they're without, without purpose. They're like, they're not feeling those connections. And as I said, I really don't feel alone anymore, ever, because I've always got my daughter with me and my grandfather and my uncles and, all those people. And I carry them with me. And I know that you feel the same thing. And
Mhm.
I think that's the way it's meant to be when we're here. We're not meant to be so lonely.
No, no, and I think that's the probably the thing that I'm hoping opens up even more, that the veil. Everybody talks about the veil, but the veil is very thin, and we have a tendency to think so far away, but we can really feel them, and there are ways I try and help people to understand, when you get that spirit chill, or you have that, oh, I think that might be a sign. Oh, no, it's not a sign. Those types of things, that there are ways to begin to confirm that you are connecting. And it takes away that, that loneliness. So you start having conversations with them when there's nobody in the, you
Yeah.
do, they're like, all right, this is what I'm doing today. Can you help me out? So,
Yeah. Well, I do. It's funny
yeah,
because people ask me about, my daughter and I'm like, yeah, of course I do miss her physical presence. I miss her a lot. But I'll tell them on the other hand, I have another daughter who lives 25 minutes from me that I don't talk to her every day, but I talk to Shayna every day because
yeah,
she's that close to me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that understanding that you're helping to bring to people is really important. And I love that the fact that you said, it's not just the energetic connection, it's also the physical. Let's understand that, but it's both. I think both are important.
Hmm.
Because to me, what you're doing, because when I heard about genealogy before, I'm like, I don't care. But when I started hearing the stories, and then I start looking at the behaviors and stuff, and I look at the tendencies like in our family. I
Hmm.
mean, going back generations. My grandfather was a minister, and both of his parents were ministers. So that goes back at this point well over 100 years, probably close to 150 years, where our family's kind of done that. And when Shayna passed, she came through a medium and she goes, "This is what our family does."
Yeah, yeah. And you are ministering to us. Like, that is, your calling, even though you may not, I don't know if you have minister, um, but that it's continuing.
Yeah, I view what I do as a ministry, and it's really interesting to me because you know my grandfather, I really really looked up to him. I went to his church, so he was like a larger than life figure to me. But I was like, well, I'm not going to be a Christian pastor. That's just not who I am. And really, since Shane has passed away, I'm like, okay, now I feel like, okay, this is what I'm here to do. And the word ministry has a very specific religious connotation, but what it really means is to serve. To
Right,
minister to someone is to serve them. So I
right.
feel like that's our family's role, is it's help people spiritually. So yeah, I do feel like I'm following in his footsteps.
Hmm. Yeah, you absolutely are, because I think it's one of the things that, it's so hard in this world because of all the difficulties with the different religions, and some of the violence that's connected with it, that a lot of people are turning away from
Hmm.
traditional. And
Hmm.
so it is a way for them, and I believe that that's a bit of what I'm doing as well, is
Hmm.
that it's a way for them to feel closer and open up maybe their relationship with universal spirit, God, whatever they feel comfortable using. That there is a connection they can have, that doesn't mean having to go into a church. Although
Yeah.
I do love a good church.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you mentioned earlier, being Catholic, and, my background is Pentecostal. And sometimes there could be, for me at least, a little bit of guilt slips in every once in a while because I'm like, I've moved away from that. And one of the most healing things to me, and this is where I think the metaphysical is important. One of the first readings I had was with a medium whose grandfather, or was a, no, her grandfather was a pastor as well, but he was into all the spiritual stuff. So he was he could see spirit and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm like, with my grandfather, now this is before I even started doing any of this. So this is how good she is, because she's like, your grandfather is really proud of what you're doing, and I wasn't doing anything then. But that I still carry that with me. This was 9 years ago. That I'm like, I want to make him proud. So
Yeah.
it was good to get that message.
Yeah. Well, you know what's so funny about it? It's he was saying it in the present. It tense because there is no time, like, so
Right,
he already knew that this was what you were going to be doing.
right.
So yeah, it's just amazing. It truly is amazing.
It really is. And so, like I said, I know the work that you're doing is really important, and I think that it's something that we could all benefit from. In a sense, even as people who are said, I'm not really interested in that, because we've all got those connections, and we have them whether we acknowledge them or not. So you might as well step up and acknowledge it.
Get introduced to them.
Yeah, yeah, and use that help, right? We've all got
Yeah,
help out there. We've all got, because we hear about, guardian angels, and we hear about guides
mm,
and stuff. We don't hear so much about ancestors that,
yeah,
like you said, that are coming to you going, "Yeah, I'm here for you."
yeah, yeah. Well, and there's fun stuff to be learned about when you do genealogy. Things get passed down. Your grandmother's eyes or Uncle Larry's ears. Uncle Larry's ears in our family are pretty big ears, and there is like, oh, phew, he didn't get it. They didn't get Uncle Larry's ears. So there's a lot of fun things that I mean, you have discovered that you are connected with a president, and Thomas Jefferson, who, I mean, that is an incredible thing to just have in your ancestry. And so there's a lot of things that you can discover, um, connections that you didn't expect. And it can be a fun journey as well. I mean, it's heavy, but it's not that heavy because it's really helping you lift.
Right. Yeah. It does. It's not all heavy. You're right, and it also helps us to understand that people are just people. We all have good and we have bad things, and so for me, um, I went to Monticello to a family
Yeah.
reunion, and that was a very surreal experience, because as I stood there on the plantation, which is really weird just in itself, and thinking that my family were the slaves, but they're also in the other side of the house. So I'm from both sides of this thing,
Yeah.
and trying to understand both sides, and what people were thinking, and what people were doing. So it really
Yeah.
helps us to, I think, understand our own humanity a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's definitely amazing.
So if people want to reach out to you, how do they go about finding you, and what kind of services can you offer to them?
So the best way to find me is at www.tellmeourstory.com, at my
Hmm.
website. But I am on Instagram and I am on Facebook. So you can find me on Instagram. Tell Me Our Story Ancestry, Ancestral Healing is
Okay.
where it is on. And the way I offer a 30-minute, just a discovery session for somebody that just wants a quick come in and just to find a little bit. And then I offer a longer strategy session, both of which are free, just to help people
Hmm.
really understand what I do offer, and how that could be helpful for them, and just answer questions. I mean, this often brings up a tremendous amount of questions.
Right.
And so I find that it is just really an opportunity to give them a way to answer some of those questions. And so that would be, and if you go to tellmeourstory.com, you will find right at the top, there's a way to sign up for a discovery session
Hmm.
there. I'm also, just on the side thing, I am going to be a panelist this year at the IONS conference at the end of the summer, the International Association of Near Death Studies. And so that's an opportunity that I'm really looking forward to connect with people. And they will be able to, it is in Phoenix, and a lot of people will be meeting there, but it's
Hmm.
also, they can get a live stream. They can, if they're interested in learning more, not only about me, but just more about, um, the metaphysics of uh, all of the things around all around us, certainly near
Awesome.
death experiences.
Yeah, I would encourage people to, if even if you can't make it to Phoenix, get the live stream of the conference. I've spoken there. I spoke there last year in DC. It's going to be great. So little plug for IANS while we're doing this. But yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations on that and on all the great things that you're doing to help heal the world, to help people understand who they are and why they're here and where they're going and all those important things.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I would just say one thing, like I'm a really easy person to talk to. So if anybody's out there saying, "Oh, I don't know whether I should," give me, come spend a half hour with me or
Hmm.
45 minutes and let me help you understand more and take a step that maybe would really help you move forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes we hesitate to reach out, and it's funny because every once in a while someone will reach out to me and say, "I've been listening to you for years. I just finally decided to reach out." Don't hesitate. If
Yeah.
if you have an interest, reach out to Bernadette and take advantage of your generous offer, and you might find there's something that you need to know. And I also just want to encourage people because this has been a struggle for me. Listen to your intuition
Mhm.
because if you have a little nudge telling you to reach out, it's probably one of your ancestors like tapping you on the head saying you should do this.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Yeah, they will. They do. They show up in funny ways. They show up in funny ways. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Bernadette, it's been wonderful getting to know you. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you so much, Brian, for inviting me.
All right. Enjoy your afternoon. Hey there, if you liked this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you liked. If you didn't like this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you didn't like. Go to grieftogrowth.com/community and look for Talk About the Podcast. I'll see you there.